Fine day to you. You're just in time. These buckets won't carry themselves, and I've no mind to take 2 trips to the well. Here, take hold. Steady now, it's a fair weight when full. Folks say it'll be dry season soon, though I've heard that every year since I was a child. Still, better be prepared, hey? What's that? You've heard whisper of the Red Wizard. Ah, now, there's a name that stirs the crows from the rooftops. I'd not expected you to ask after that tale. It's not exactly cheerful, and there are those who would rather it stayed buried. But I suppose if you've come all this way, and you are helping me out, and if you've got your heart set on the shadows, only don't say I didn't warn you. Emma and Arn were twins, born in the same hour, raised in the same fields. The village liked to say that they shared not only birthday, but a single heartbeat. Their days passed with an honest simplicity. At dawn, Emma rose with the mill wheels grown and carried the grain to thresh in the barn, her flail keeping time with the sparrows outside. Arn, by contrast, was a little louder. He was forever whistling, humming, and calling out to the pigs as he drove them into the oak woods for pannage. He claimed he could tell each beast apart by the curl of its tail or by the sound of its grunt. Emma teased that he simply liked them better than the company of people. Come evening, though, he would return muddy-booted, pockets bulging with acorns and chestnuts, laughing as he shook them out onto the table. It was a life without grandeur, but not without joy. The fields stretched golden and sure, the stream gave them trout enough to fill their bellies, and at night they slept in the same loft they had shared since childhood, whispering until dreams took them. The world was small, steady, and safe. Or so Emma thought. For one evening, Arn did not return. The pigs came back on their own, snuffling at the gate. Arn's whistle never followed. As the sky dimmed and the shadows stretched long, Emma left her work and followed the swine's trail into the darkening wood, the hush of twilight pressing her close, and each step carried her deeper beneath the boughs. At last, she came upon a hollow where her brother knelt. His arms were streaked with blood, fresh cuts running down his forearms. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. "They're drinking it," he muttered. His voice shook as if the words themselves were stolen from him. "The fairies are drinking my blood." Emma dropped to her knees beside him, heart hammering. She tore strips from her apron, bound his arms and whispered comforts, yet no matter how tightly she held him, the fear in his voice clung to her long after she led him home. For days after the night in the woods, Emma kept Arn close. His wounds healed, but his mind wandered in fits and starts. Some mornings he rose clear-eyed, ever cheerful, and whistled as though nothing were amiss. Other times he laughed at nothing, or spoke to shadows, or clawed at the bindings Emma wrapped around his arms. She told the elders that he were only fevered, or drunk on last year's cider, or struck by some passing ailment, but her words rang hollow, for Arn was not the only one. The miller boy had been found raving by the riverbank, flailing at the water as though it pulled him under. The shepherd's wife tore her own hair out by the handfuls, convinced snakes writhed beneath her scalp. A mason walked straight into the shallows of the ford, his eyes fixed on something only he could see, and he had to be dragged spluttering to the shore. Fear spread quietly at first, in whispers shared at the market and behind shut doors. But soon it became as plain as the silence that fell over the village each evening. Mothers pulled children indoors before sunset. Men barred shutters and doors, swearing that they heard footsteps in the lanes long after curfew. The games of laughter and song that once filled the green faded into the hushed prayers and quickened footsteps. Even the priest who once spoke of faith with a voice like a bell now kept the chapel barred at night. Some swore they heard him weeping within, crying that demons clawed at the very door. And so it was this way it seemed for weeks, until one day a stranger arrived. He came rolling into the square upon a wagon with wheels painted red. His cloak was the colour of dried earth, his beard streaked with iron grey. The dogs bristled at his passing, hens scratched, but he carried himself with a calm that made folk pause in their suspicion. With a flick of his wrist, he lit torches without flint. With a muttered word, he turned water to wine. With a snap of his fingers, sparks danced from the air itself. For the first time in many weeks, laughter rippled across the square. Children clapped, elders, though wary, nodded at his craft. But not all were charmed. Emma pushed through the gathering crowd, Arne's arm gripped tight in her hand. His eyes were darting, his breath quick. She lifted her voice over the gasps and murmurs. "Sir," she asked, though her voice trembled a little, "can your magic cure madness?" The wizard's gaze turned to her, sharp and shining like wet stone. He smiled, though there was no warmth in it. The gathered crowd fell silent. The wizard stood in the square. He held a pewter cup in one hand, and from it poured a draught as dark as bruised beetroot, sharp with a smell that stung the nose. The crowd gathered in wary silence, lanterns flickering against his cloak. "I know what ails you," he said, his voice carrying to every ear. "This is a curse, and so comes the sickness that gnaws at your kin. I know of a cure, and would be happy to share. But a cure is not wrought from thin air. It must be laboured, brewed, tended, and paid for." "What price?" asked a voice in the crowd. The wizard turned and pointed. "I will take up residence in the grain barn, over there. If you leave me be, and bring me a hen from every house, I shall brew a draught that drives out the madness, thus ending the curse." A murmur rose, some scoffing, some pleading. To trust the village's harvest to a man no one knew was folly. Yet Arne's laugh broke the silence, sudden and wild, drawing fearful glances. A child began to scream in the back of the crowd, clawing at her face until her mother dragged her away, fear outweighing doubt. One by one, the villagers came forward, hens squawking in their arms. Some bought fat birds, others half-starving things, but all paid. The wizard received each with a bow, and then at last his wagon overflowed, and he strode towards the barn. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. Bolts were drawn. From within came the sound of iron cauldrons, the hiss of boiling herbs, the sharp stink of smoke that curled through the cracks. The villagers kept their distance, watching, waiting, praying. 2 days passed. Emma stood at the edge of the square, her hand locked around Arne's, though he trembled like a leaf in a storm. The stench grew day by day, and still no cure was offered, only the mutter of strange chants echoing from within the barn. Emma could bear it no longer. Arne's ravings grew worse with each night. Laughter turned to howls, his arms raw from clawing. So she dragged him through the square, her fingers white-knuckled around his wrist, and hammering at the barred doors of the grain store. "Wizard!" she cried. "You promised a cure! Give it, or let the village see that you are a liar!" From within came a hiss, a groan, and then the doors creaked wide. Vapours billowing out, sharp as vinegar and iron. The wizard stepped forth, his cloak dark with soot, his eyes shining through the haze. In his hand he held a pig's bladder, swollen with foul-smelling liquid, the colour of dried blood. He pressed it into Emma's palm, his other hand clutching hers tight. His lips moved. A prayer, or a curse, she could not tell. Arne did not wait. With a wild cry, he snatched the bladder, bit the knot and drank deep. The stench was enough to turn Emma's stomach. Moments later, he dropped to the ground, convulsing in a fit so violent she thought his bones would break. She knelt, helpless, tears streaking her cheeks. And then, at last, Arn grew still. His chest rose and fell, slow, steady. His eyes closed, and for the first time in weeks, his body lay quiet, his breath unbroken by laughter or screams. The wizard's gaze lingered on Emma. "Here you have your cure, and now you'll have your faith in me. See that the villagers do not forget this." And with that he turned back into the smoke, the barn doors slamming shut behind him. The wizard took up permanent residence, and we'll find out why next time. But for now, that's all I've got time for. The roads are long and winding, but they have a way of crossing again. So when next you find yourself wandering this way, you'll know where to find me. Safe travels.